Hi, I'm Christine Benz for Morningstar.com. The retirement crisis is in many ways a women's retirement crisis. Joining me to discuss that topic is Sally Krawcheck. She is CEO of Ellevate Network. Sally, thank you so much for being here.
Christine, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You gave a terrific presentation today at the Morningstar Investment Conference where you talked about the challenges that are confronting women, why in many cases this retirement crisis is hitting women disproportionately. Let's run through some of those numbers because they're really quite stunning.
Well, and you know, I've known some of these numbers for a while, and it wasn't until several months ago that all of a sudden I said, oh my goodness. If women make, and they do, 77, 78 cents on the dollar to a man, if women take more career breaks than men do, women then retire with 2/3 the money that a man does. That's a fact. Women live 6 to 8 years longer than men do. There is a statistic floating around, 80% of men die married, 80% of women die single. If you look at any nursing home, it's 75, 80, 83% women. And I was standing around one day and all of a sudden said, oh my goodness, if we have a retirement savings crisis in this country, it's a gender crisis also. The interesting thing about it, beyond just the insight itself, is that if you begin to view this as a gender crisis, then you begin to recognize that the solutions, which today, the ones we talk about, are all pretty unpalatable. Actually, some number of them become more palatable. It's about keeping women in the workforce longer, having women invest to a greater degree. Those are much more palatable than, hey, you know what, in 40 years, we're going to have a big wealth transfer that has to occur.
A big focus of yours has been the fact that you believe that the financial services community is really underserving women to their detriment as well as to women's detriment. Let's discuss that, the ways in which you think the industry really isn't stepping up to this challenge for women.
Well, look, what I would say is I am a big fan of financial advisors. And the industry does a great job for broad segments of the population. In fact, you know, in the businesses that I ran, Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, Smith Barney, the satisfaction rate of our gentlemen clients for their financial advisor was 90%, 90% plus. Higher, in fact, than better than they felt about their doctors. However, when he passes away, first, which we indicate is what happens most often, she leaves their joint financial advisor over the next year 70% of the time, and often she puts that money in the bank. And so what is clear is that the primary relationship is with him. The relationship is not with her. And what do the women tell us? Well, they tell us, look, we had this financial advisor for years and he didn't pay attention to me, or he didn't answer my questions. I don't understand the jargon. I don't understand the trading. He never took the time with me to answer those questions. And so as we talk to women, what they're really looking for is that direct one-to-one engagement, really understanding the capabilities and really helping her and them to reach their goals, not outperform some market index.
So this is a two-way street. Advisors could do a better job, the industry could do a better job, but women could arguably do a better job, make smarter decisions about how they're managing their assets.
Oh, Christine, let's not blame the victim here, okay?
Let's talk about ways in which women could improve.
For sure. So, you know, you'd like, and there are any number of good financial advisors who are, as we say, meeting the women where they are. We as an industry can certainly do more work there, but as a woman, what should we do? And the answer is we should invest. And disclosure is not particularly our friend here. Mutual fund prospectuses are that long. You know, it's tough to get through all of this. And so we have to recognize that we're so used to being A students. We're so used to knowing everything. Look, you got to know the facts, but you know, if you're waiting until you know, read through all these piles of data and know the answer to every last question, you know, you're not going to invest. You're not going to invest. It's very difficult to do. And so going to investing first principles of looking for high quality investments, looking for investments where the cost is lower, talking to your friends about who they engage with, who they really like, really going back to first principles. But you talk to many women and they say, I don't understand yet. And if we wait till we understand everything, we're not going to do it.
One other thing you alluded to is the fact that women oftentimes are more risk averse than their male counterparts. So how can women kind of step it up and make sure that they're taking an appropriate amount of risk, especially if they're a younger investor? They need to have stocks, but they might be scared about getting out of that bank savings account.
Well, that's right. There is research that's shown that women value capital protection 7 times as much as they value wealth creation. And so some might say more risk averse, others might say more risk aware. I think the way to get comfortable to take on more risk is to have a fulsome conversation with the advisor. You know, what are my risks here? In bad down markets before, what would have happened, right? And each market downturn is different from the one before. But I've heard, I had a friend say to me not long ago, but what if there's a market crash and I lose all of my money? And you say, well, that would be that would be a really bad market crash. Well, that would be a bad one. You know, if everything went to zero, that's a bad market crash. If, on the other hand, one looks at the crashes of 07 and 08, early 2000, 1987, right, that in general, if one continues to invest in the market, one recovers over the next 4 years. And so beginning to work with an advisor or read the research out there, read the information out there about how can I get comfortable with this risk? What would this really mean? And yes, keeping some portion in low-risk securities if that makes one sleep at night. Those are totally fine.
Okay, Sally, such an important topic. Thank you so much for being here to discuss your research and discuss your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you, Christine.
Thanks for watching. I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com.